Tom Schurch, President of the Schurch Family Association of North America. On behalf of the entire Executive Committee, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the second Schurch Family Association Symposium. The Symposium series events are the stories of your Schurch heritage. They are designed to increase the opportunities to learn about our fascinating and frequently heroic Schurch family. The Schurch family history is deeply entwined with the Reformed religious movement in Switzerland. Many Schurchs were Anabaptists, and of that faith in the early 18th century, they were persecuted for their religious beliefs. Regardless of the spelling of your last name, all Schurchs today descend from some intrepid individuals who, when faced with religious persecution, chose to retain their belief in God. The consequences were great. Personal property was confiscated. Families were separated. Some were imprisoned. As we'll learn today, many were sent to the Netherlands, and several set sail for the British colony of Philadelphia beginning in 1728. The trials and tribulations of early Schurchs that they faced and overcame can be an inspiration to all, especially during these times. The Symposium series is just part of the association's drive to expand and teach the knowledge of our ancestors. For example, we are tracing the living locations of your Schurch ancestors in Europe in the 18th century. Also, we are researching Schurch genealogy through DNA techniques. We also hold a biannual reunion, and the next one is scheduled for August 5th through 7th, 2022 in Fort Erie, Ontario, Canada. Details of the reunion will be forthcoming in the April 2022 edition of the Schurch Family Newsletter, which we publish twice a year and offer both paper and digital subscriptions. We just published the November edition, which is still available to subscriptions received by the end of this calendar year. Subscription information is available at the Schurch Family website, which is located at www.schurchfamilyassociation.net. Additionally, I would like to invite you to mark your calendars for Sunday, February 26th, when we are scheduled to present Schurch 102, which will cover the migration of Schurchs from Philadelphia to other parts of North America. Our presentation today is entitled Schurch 101 and covers a brief introduction to the Schurch family's origins in Switzerland, as well as the developments leading the first family members to leave and eventually immigrate to Philadelphia. Our host, historical chairman Steve Schurch, will also provide an introduction to the family coding system that can enable you to trace your ancestry back for up to 8 centuries. Steve and his assembled panel of experts will take your questions using the Zoom chat feature after the presentation. Before I turn the presentation over to Steve, I'd like to remind everyone that this event is being recorded, and we will be archiving it on YouTube with links from our Schurch Family Association website and Schurch Family Association Facebook page. In addition, we suggest you move your screen setting to the full screen setting and speaker setting, and you want to move the thumbnail video setting to the hide position. This setting will enable your screen to provide uninterrupted viewing of the presentation. Third, all participants at tonight's event have their lines muted. During the presentation and during the question and answer session that will follow, you are encouraged to use the chat feature, which is accessible by way of placing your computer's cursor over the chat icon that is typically at the bottom of your screen and clicking your cursor. The chat window will pop up and you can type in your question or comment and then press enter. At the conclusion of tonight's presentation, Steve will read questions received and provide answers as time follows and allows. We have scheduled today's event for 1 hour. I'd like to thank the Symposium Committee for all the time and effort that they have spent in bringing tonight's event to you. A specific thanks to Carrie Adams, Doug Schurch, Jane Schurch, and Steve Schurch, who worked closely together, bringing tonight's content together, and Ray Schurch for producing the event. The committee requests that any input on tonight's event, including corrections or additions to the information presented, be sent to schurchsymposium@gmail.com. Finally, I'd like to remind our audience and our family that symposium presentations are by Schurchs for Schurchs. If you have a topic of interest, please send your idea to schurchsymposium@gmail.com, and one of our committee members will be in touch. And now I'm delighted to turn the microphone over to Stephen Schurch, chairperson of the Schurch Family Association Historical Committee for Schurch 101.
Hello, my name is Stephen Schurch. I'm the chairman of the Historical Committee for the Schurch Family Association of North America. I would like to welcome you to this edition of our symposium titled "The Coming to America." As you see in this first slide, our family crest, which dates back to 1379, and the various spellings of the Schurch family name. These were found in various documents throughout the years from overseas and in North America. The most popular ones I have shown here in red. According to some Swiss researchers, the name Schurch first appeared in 1379 in Willisau, Canton, Lucerne, Switzerland. From there, the name branched out to Surrey, Albersville, and later into Canton Bern. Other researchers give evidence that the name Schurch was already in Bergdorf in Canton Bern by 1360. In either case, the name of Schurch was firmly established by the 1500s in Canton Bern. The Schurch families in the U.S. and Canada are descendants of these Schurchs who resided in Canton Bern. Swiss towns in Canton Bern in which the name Schurch was established at an early date include Summisville, Hemesville, Alberberg, Ruhrbach, Gondesville, Waltersville, and others. Of these, Summisville is considered to be the original home of the Schurchs who came to America. I've shown you here the various flags that represents Switzerland, Canton Bern, the region of Summersfold, and Schurch is the crest that we recognize for our homestead in Summersfold. What were some of the Anabaptist beliefs? Opposition to infant baptism. They received the nickname Anabaptists or rebaptizers as they denied the validity of infant baptism and insisted upon receiving adult baptism upon the voluntary confession of their faith. They refused to participate in the government. Anabaptists knew they belonged to the new Mennonite order, in which radically different ways of acting were the norm. If they were serious about their confessions of nonviolence, they could not participate in the functions of any state in their time. They also refused to take oaths. The basic statement on the oath found in the literature simply restate Jesus' prohibition of swearing any oath at all. The oath is not used by disciples of Jesus since it is designed to ensure that truth is spoken. There was an added dimension to the Anabaptist refusal of oaths. Many of them were faced with swearing an oath of allegiance to the state of which they were citizens. They also refused to participate in warfare. Like the refusal to take an oath, this refusal follows directly from the Anabaptist view of the disciples' relation to the state. To Anabaptists, refusal to fight signified a truth in God's hand in the ultimate consequences of human conflict. Why did they immigrate from Europe? With but a few exceptions, the Schurch immigrants were all of the Mennonite faith. For those familiar with Mennonite history, it is well known that these simple people were intensely persecuted in their Swiss homeland and elsewhere for their religious beliefs and practice. Escape from persecution and the promise of being able to live a simple life with others of like faith in a new land was their motive for going to America. The persecution of the Anabaptists arose out of the conflict between their religious ideology and those of the state church of that time. Some reasons for emigrating were that Anabaptists or Mennonites were burned at the stake, drowned, jailed, tortured, and subjected to some of the most inhumane treatments imaginable. Another method of persecution was to confiscate their property. Mennonites in Holland assisted their persecuted brethren in Switzerland as the great migration of the Mennonites out of Switzerland into the German Palatinate began in 1671. Documentation shows many boarding the river boat Emmentaler to sail down the Rhine River from Switzerland to Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Hagen, which is in the region of Friesland, or other parts in Holland. Departing ships frequently stopped in England before sailing on to America. Ellsman in his book stated that not less than 50,000 embarked to America and nearly 20,000 died at sea. Many of the recorded journeys from Switzerland were down the Rhine River to Rotterdam or some other port in Holland. The journey lasted sometimes up to 6 months. There were many custom checkpoints along the river. The hardships were many, and hundreds died along the way. By 1732, there were more than 600 Mennonite families with a total population of over 3,000 persons on board ships who suffered from dysentery, constipation, boils, and mouth rot during their voyages. Communicable diseases broke out, and many people, especially children, died from measles and smallpox. Few women survived childbirth, and the bodies of those who died were thrown overboard. The stench and fumes were horrible, and lice on the sick were so thick that they were scraped from the bodies. Imagine the overwhelming sense of relief that people felt as the New World came into view. A normal trip to America took about 2 months unless there were unexpected weather or other conditions. After arrival in the port of Philadelphia, the passengers remained on board ship until they were cleared for landing. Those who were able to pay the cost of their journey or had people who could give surety were permitted to disembark. Those who could not pay for passage were sold as indentured servants. After clearing customs, many migrants left the city to carve out homesteads in the interior of the colony. Here I show you the coding system that we used for the families as they arrived in North America. All entries were through the port of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, except for immigrant code A, Joe Schurch, who entered at Virginia. This information was first published in Thomas A. Schurch's book titled The Schurch Family. It can also be found on our website. Subsequent generations are given a code number according to the order of their birth in the family. The single digit runs in sequence from 1 to 0, and then A, B, C, etc., where 0 represents the 10th child, A is the 11th child, B the 12th, and so on. Using this notation for my ancestors, the first child of Caspar Schurch, code H, would be H1, Wendell Schurch. The second child would be H2 Caspar Schurch, and the third H3 Peter Schurch. The 10th child in this family is code H0 Andrew Schurch, and if there were any other than or an 11th child, the code would have been HA, such as an 11th child would have been code HA. In the generation, the first child of H1 would be H11. The second child would be H12, etc. And the children of the 10th child of HA would be HA1, HA2, and so on. Thus, my name, whose identification number is H44112562, would have the following ancestral line. You can see here, starting with H. Caspar Schurch, the immigrant who arrived. And then his fourth eldest son was Joseph Schurch, code H4. Joseph's fourth eldest son was H44, Caspar Schurch, again, another name. H441, which was second Caspar's first child, was Joseph Schurch. And if you follow it all the way down, you'll see that I'm the second eldest child of George Basil Schurch, who was the sixth eldest child at the end of these sequence codes. And my son, Stephen George Elbert Schurch, is the third eldest child. One of the ships that sailed from Holland to North America was the voyage of the ship Love and Unity. This was a crime at sea that was left unpunished, according to the text. On 24 June 1731, code H. Caspar Schurch, with his wife and child, boarded the ship Love and Unity with 147 other Mennonites on board, with Captain Jacob Lobb at the helm. They sailed from Holland to Falmouth, England, in order to clear customs. After 2 weeks at sea, a raging storm overwhelmed the ship. The captain and his crew hoarded food, drank the passengers' wine, and stole their valuables. The Mennonites were forced to eat rats and moldy bread, with only rainwater to quench their thirst. The naked bodies of the dead were thrown overboard. After leaving Falmouth, England, they were now at sea for 24 weeks with only 58 survivors who suffered from starvation and abuse, who arrived at Martha's Vineyard. The captain and crew were found not guilty for their treatment of the Mennonites. Our organization, the Schurch Family Association, started in 1983. Our April 1983 edition of the newsletter informed everyone that the Schurch Family Association North America function, which was organized at the July 1982 reunion held in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, was to provide a means for all members scattered all over the United States and Canada to have a means of communications. The executive at that time was President Olile Ronald Schurch, Vice President Jerry W. Schurch, Secretary Bill T. Schurch, Treasurer Judy Farley, and historical advisors Hal C. Schurch and Thomas A. Schurch. There's also a Swiss association that started in 1980. In 1980, the Schurchs in Switzerland organized a Schurch Family Association with the name Gesellschaft der Namensträger Schurch, or SGNS. Schurch families from all over Switzerland first met together and continues to operate as our Switzerland Association today. A much smaller branch of the family tree was organized as an association in Chile since 1885. Now that we are coming to the end of this presentation, I would like to let you know how to find where you fit in the family tree, especially those young historians. I think the best thing that you can do would be to send us an email at schurchsymposium@gmail.com. Schurch is spelled Schurch. And we will see how we can fit you with your code in the family tree. If you can give us some information, such as your full name, your parents' full name, and their parents, and so on, as far back as possible, with dates and places of their births, when they and where they died, that would certainly help. But this is a good start if you want to learn about your family tree, your ancestors, and your individual family code. Our next symposium will be in February next year. This will be the second part of this presentation. Our next presentation, we will be talking about Schurchs crossing America, with places where families settled, starting in Pennsylvania to Ontario to our western shores in North America, including those who went to Chile and other places. At that time, we will be mentioning some notable Schurchs who contribute to our family history and the history of North America, and the culture of our history in Canada and the U.S. There might be some surprises for you. Oh, welcome to this portion of our presentation today. I hope you enjoyed what you've seen so far. I'm not an actor by any means. In any case, I'm opening up now to any questions that you may have. I'll be able to answer some of them, but I have our other chairman or past chairman of the historical committee, Justin Hauser, is here as well. And between the two of us, hopefully we'll be able to answer many of them. You'll send the questions by chat. I'll pull them up, I'll read them out, and then from there, we'll see if we can answer your questions. This will be for 30 minutes, and we'll see where it takes us. Anybody have a question, want to send it? Now is a good time to do that. And in the meantime, you know, I've had some questions already sent to us. One question somebody asked was, how do we become members of the association? Well, anybody can join the association. It's just a matter of contacting us through our website or Facebook, and that you don't have to be a Schurch. You can be anybody interested in learning more about the Schurchs and any possible connections that would happen that your family may belong to. So feel free to contact us anytime. And if that doesn't work, you can always contact me directly at steve.schurch@yahoo.ca. I have a question here that came in from Judy. It says, I have recently put quite a bit of ancestry in WikiTree. Has there been an effort to enter the Schurch genealogy in WikiTree? Well, I'm going to pass this to Justin. Justin is in charge of our website or database, and he can tell you what we've been dealing with for connections to these other genealogical programs such as Ancestry and RootsWeb. Justin, you want to take that from here?
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can go ahead there, Justin.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So WikiTree is a great resource. We have a lot of our family data in, and it's being added by a team of the database committee to what's called Ancestral Quest, is the software we've been using, and it's GEDCOM compatible. And at least once a year, and we're coming close to the time when I need to do this, but we've been uploading it to a variety of websites so that people can access the information that we have compiled on the different family branches. And of course, Ancestry's family trees, it goes there. It goes on a European site called GeneaNet, GeneaNet. It goes, and it historically has gone on rootsweb.com, but that appears to be defunct at this point. But to circle back to your original question, I would love to have the information included in WikiTree, although it's my understanding that because that's a shared tree, it's not as simple as just uploading our GEDCOM once a year, but rather it has to be integrated with what's already there. I think if somebody or somebodies would be interested in doing that or helping with that, we would be happy to have that done. However, what we have now is well over 100,000 names. And so if it can be easily interfaced with it, I think it would be a great idea. I'm just not as up to speed yet to know how much of an effort that would be. But if you want to contact us offline about other places where we could potentially host the material in our tree, we'd love to follow up with you about that.
Thank you, Justin. We have a question from Robert. He says, any idea the total number of Schürchs in the US or Canada? That's a very good question. I know that Ray compiles our database of all the names that we know of where we have addresses and phone numbers and email addresses. He keeps track of that as much as possible. Unfortunately, people move, change their phone numbers, change their email addresses, so we do lose contact with them. I don't think we can give you an accurate number. There's so many Schürchs out there that we still don't know about. We have lots of names of people that we haven't been able to connect up to the family tree yet, and we keep them in the background so that if the day comes when we can link them, then certainly they'll be there. Is there another question somebody would like to ask? I know that there's a question that came up before as well as regards to the spelling of the name. I think at one time we've had up to 73 different spellings of the name. And that's what happens when people come over from Europe and you have an immigration official sitting there in North America receiving you, and you don't know how to write your name. They write that down with the way they think that they hear it. So they may spell it one way, and then of course during the census time, whoever the census government official may record it a different way, and that's what happens. It just keeps evolving. So if you think you are from the line, the Schürchs, and you're not sure about your spelling, don't worry about that. Send us the email and we'll certainly investigate that further for you. Any other questions? There's a couple of questions that also came up in regards to children, as to whether how we record them and so on. Well, we always try to record the children and give them codes by their date of birth. And we include adopted children as well, because they are part of the family unit, especially when you have remarriages and new children come in to that family unit. We add them in there because down the road, their descendants may want to know where they came from, and if they see the Schürch name, they certainly want to know where that connection is. So we do apply the code. It may not be in sequence according to the date of birth when we add in half siblings and that, but they certainly are added in. And that same as it goes for stillborns. As long as a child is born, we will include them in the family tree. And if you have a name, that helps, and that we appreciate that. Ray sent us a question here. He says, if you need them, where we go here? They're moving up fast here. If you need them, some questions from our dress rehearsal for the okay, thanks, Ray. Marilyn, my ancestor is John Schürch, married or in Knoxville, early 1800s. Where do I send information to get my code? Well, I'm the first step on the codes. You can either do it through the website or through the Facebook, but you would send it to our Symposium email address or send it directly to me. As the chairman of the historical committee, I will start the search going. We have something like 10 historians. We have all the the books that have been written by Schurchs about Schurchs and all the other names out there, especially the ones that are the same Anabaptist Mennonite beliefs. They have Schurchs married into those families. So we do that research. We have a fantastic database that Justin talked to you about. We go to there to try to get the connection and we will provide you as much of a link as possible to give you your personal code. Okay, and one of the things that we had a discussion the other day was in regards to the female side of the tree. Our families are important to us, male or female. We want to know what your codes are going to be or what they have been. And so for us, if you're carrying a name like Reesor or Weidman or that, and you think that you're related to the Schurchs through coming down to the female side, by all means, connect with us and we will see where we can connect up with you and help you get your code as well. And another question in relation to that was the additional spouses. In our database, online database, we as the historians through our data entry people put it into Ancestral Quest, and in there's pull down windows. If you have a first marriage, that will appear as the names that pop up, and in the pull down window you can see the additional marriages, and when you pull up that additional marriage, the children that came from that marriage will come up under that separate window as well. So yes, we continue to expand our family database according to the marriages as well, and we continue to assign the codes to it. Any other questions?
We could always mention the DNA at this point while we're waiting for any other questions.
Good point there, Justin. If you want to go ahead and talk about that.
All right, just very briefly, obviously, as you can see from this presentation, our association is trying to keep up with the 21st century. And one of the ways that genealogy does that is, in addition to the traditional paper research and research and records, I should say, is the opportunity to research via DNA. And we have had for several years now, under the founding of Tom Schurch, a Schurch DNA project, which is chiefly related to the Y DNA to try to eliminate on the male line, to try to understand the relationships between the various Schurch immigrants and the Schurchs in Switzerland. But regardless of whether you have a male or female Schurch line, there may be a part for you to play in this. So if you have had your DNA taken and tested at any of the major companies, or if you are interested in doing that or having a potential Schurch relative do that, please contact us, and Alan Leiss and myself are the co-chairs of that particular project. But we've posted the Schurch Symposium email up there for people to see. So if you just want to direct it through there for simplicity, and it can get routed to us. But if you have any interest in participating in the DNA project or questions about it, please drop us a note, and we'd be glad to discuss that further with you. The results of the project are hosted on FamilyTreeDNA.com to date. There's a Schurch, SCHURCH project there. And the results from the tests that we've accumulated over the years have helped us to document how the different branches are related to each other, and have been able to confirm some questions that we had, or rather answer some questions that we had. DNA does not replace traditional genealogy research in records, but it supplements it, and it can help where records are confusing or missing. It can help us and also to identify other lines that we might not have known about. So if you have any interest in that at all or questions, please drop us a note, and Alan and I would love to be able to discuss that with you further.
Thank you, Justin. Diane asked the question, how long were the Mennonites in North America before they moved away from their faith? Well, that there's so many different answers to that. I know with my family, they came up into Ontario or Upper Canada to Kitchener-Waterloo area. Joseph Schurch and his brother Casper, which is one of my great-grandfathers, came up into Markham, Ontario. he resided in Gormley Corners and went to a Tunker church. So the drifting away started around that time. His next children, or his children, when they moved away from that area, started to adopt other religions based on where they were living. So my grandfather is an Anglican with the Anglican Church of Canada. So I can't give you a direct answer to that, because depending on where the families went, that's when they would have started changing their faith and that. And certainly, if you want to send us a follow-up question to that by email, we can investigate it further. I don't know if we can get a concrete answer for you, but we're probably looking into right up until the mid to end of the 1800s before we start seeing these changes. But there are a lot of Schurchs still out there that are Anabaptists and that. Another thing, another question came up is how do you code twins? Well, my wife is a twin, identical twin. And her sister Karen was born before Kathy. So Karen will get the first code and Kathy will get the second code. Very simple question. Thank you very much. And everybody knows that you can send these questions to our Schurch Symposium at gmail.com site if you don't hear answers to your questions tonight. What is the name of the Facebook group? Well, that's a question I hadn't even thought myself. Justin, you know what their Facebook page is called?
I will look it up here and can certainly share that.
All right.
It's it's Schurch Family Association of North America. And I'll tell you what, I will post the link for it in the chat box that hopefully people will be able to see. If you go to that link, you'll go right to our Facebook page. We encourage you to click the like and the follow button, and then you'll get updates whenever something's posted there, including updates on the reunions and other things that we're doing.
And just in the Schurch spelling that appears on these sites is the S-C-H-U-R-C-H spelling?
Yes, we try to keep it, even though many people have different spellings, it seems we try to keep it fairly consistent just to make it easy for everybody.
Yeah. And here's another question for you, Justin. Came from Doug Schurch. He wanted to know, were the first arrivals in Philadelphia free or indentured servants? And that, so maybe you were deep into our Lost Years project. I don't know whether you can answer that or not.
As far as we know, they came here without any indentures, and they were not indentured when they came. They were heads of families, and the earliest ones, Joseph Schurch, Ulrich Schurch, some of those were fairly well established. They left for religious reasons, but they did have some money. And even those that didn't, for example, Caspar Schurch, we found that right before he left the Netherlands, he received some money for his family from the Dutch Mennonites, and that was pretty common and something maybe for a future presentation. But the Dutch Mennonites really helped the Swiss Mennonites as they were transiting out of Switzerland, and so they came here with they weren't extremely wealthy or anything of that nature, but they came here with sufficient means to get themselves established in this country at least. Thanks.
Doug also wanted to know about we talked about Tom Schurch's book that he wrote, one of the original, he was our first chairman of the historical committee and helped create this association. I think there's limited copies out there. If they're available, the best thing to do is send an email. Actually, the best thing to do is put it in the newsletter. Put it in the newsletter saying you're looking for this particular book or any book, because we post questions in the newsletter. And if somebody has a spare copy, well, certainly they'll respond to you and let you know where you can get one. But I don't think they're being printed by publishers anymore than that. But it was a good question. Thanks for asking. Okay. So Doug again asked a question. Did all these ships that we indicated in our arriving into North America, did they all come from Holland? in that, or did they come from other countries? Well, I mentioned in my presentation about Caspar Schurch that he left Holland and went to Falmouth, England, where they had to clear customs and that. And whether there's others that left from other areas, I don't think so. I think they all came from Holland. But Justin, do you have an answer to that as well?
I think, at least for the 18th century ones, I think that's right. The major port of emigration for continental Europe at that time was mostly Rotterdam. And it seems like most of the ones that we know of, now, of course, there could be ones that we don't know of, and we don't know what we don't know, but the ones that we know of seem generally from Rotterdam and then across. Now, in the 19th century, there were several other ports of embarkation. And so there were Schurchs who were a little bit outside the scope of this talk, but there were Schurchs that came later on and went to different places and left from other ports. But that group was they were generally not Mennonite in origin, but they would be the subject of a whole other talk at some point, probably.
Good, thanks. Mike Schurch wanted to know about the books, the bibliographies that were written by, say Hal Schurch and Ron Schurch and Tom Schurch and John Schurch, and there's a lot more out there. Whether they are available and how can you find them? Carrie Adams, I think, has published them in the previous newsletters. Carrie is an editor of our newsletter, and there's a good chance that down the road we can publish that again so people knows where to find it. There's whether they're being reprinted, I can't answer that, but certainly a good question, like I mentioned about Tom Schurch, is to put your question in the newsletter and see if somebody can provide a copy for you. And we talked about the DNA project already. Okay, Lisa Carey, thank you. You brought up this good question about further trips to Switzerland. We've had a number of tours now. I've been on 2 myself, and I was a 3rd time I was over there when I was president of the association. We are trying to plan or looking at planning down the road, hopefully not too far, another trip to Switzerland back to do the tour of the various places of interest in that. But this time I think we're going to try to go to the Holland and that, start in those areas. And go from there up, maybe up the Rhine, up to Switzerland. I don't know what the plans are, but I know that's what we're looking at because we've come from the other side. Now let's start there and go back because we might find some interesting information there as well. Very good question. And what year that's going to be, I can't answer that. Normally these things are about 6 years apart, but who knows? COVID has interfered with a lot of plans that we've been having. Lynn's question is, how do I find info about the family crest? Also a Canadian descendant. I wonder if you find many common other names such as Salwigs, Wingers, Neffs. Well, Reesers, Stofers, Hoovers, Brewbakers, Burkholders, Weidmans, Smiths, Martins, Evies, Herbs. A lot of them. I got Gingrich here. I got lots of books written by other families that include Schurch's names in them for Upper Canada and that, and of course in the United States as well. So yeah, there's lots of reference material out there you can get through your libraries, I'm sure. And as for the family crest question, well, we've published that in our newsletters as well, the crest, the origin of the crest, and the different, there's more than one. We have the old crest and then we have the newer crest for Schurch Dun. But certainly we can answer that. I had that question just several months ago. I answered as well through email. I was going somewhere with this conversation. I lost track. So maybe I'll come back to it when I think of what I was going to say. Yeah, so Justin provided that link there, https://www.facebook.com// or Schurch Family Association. Oh, there's dots in between each of those words?
It appears so, yeah.
Yeah, that's for the Facebook. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It says, Bonnie says, I'm interested in interconnections with First Nations groups during settlement years. You know, I've had that come up a lot of times. People were wondering if they were connected to the Aboriginals, and that I know on my side, the Loshaws, we always thought we were connected there through the Métis side. But I can't answer that question. I wish I could. But if you want to send that to us, we'll maybe one of the historians and that we can get back to you and provide an answer for you. And if you know of anything, anybody out there knows of anything regarding the Aboriginal interaction with the Aboriginal communities, by all means, send that to us. We're always looking for interesting articles for our newsletter. That would make Carrie really happy, our editor, and that. Mike says, for the USA, Schurch, has anyone completed records on Schurch involvement in the Revolutionary War, Civil War, etc.? Well, you missed a lot of good newsletters, because Carrie was very he put a lot of good stuff into the newsletters about the War of 1812 and the Revolutionary Wars, Schurchs that were involved in this. And that you can get back issues of these newsletters anytime you want. It's just a matter of emailing Carrie or through the website or Facebook or myself, and we can certainly direct you to the people who are holding the copies right now. KD says, as Mennonites, did the Schurchs participate in the American Revolution? Some did in that, and those were mentioned in there. I don't know, Justin, you want to mention any names in particular that you know of?
Well, we know that in Code H, Andrew Schurch was one of the most active. He joined the Continental Army, and his service took him to the South, where he got married, and then he moved on through Kentucky and up to Indiana. His is one of the more interesting stories, I think. But there were a number of others who, at least in Pennsylvania, there was a requirement that all able-bodied males make themselves available for the militia drills. And some Mennonite members of the family complied with that. Some did not and paid fines in exchange. So you have a mixture of active service to passive service to principled resistance, or non-resistance, I should say. So it just, you know, if you have a particular line that we want to trace, or you want to trace, we can tell you what we know about it if you reach out to us. But there's a broad spectrum there.
Thanks. You know, here's another good question in that he says, what are the, and this comes from Diane, what are some of the common occupations of Schurch family that came over to North America? Well, you know, William Penn just loved to get the Mennonites over. They're great farmers, great with animal husbandry. They are craftsmen. I think there's not too much you can't touch on about what they were doing. They worked with their hands. They were weavers. Goes on and on. Again, I can't hazard a guess what the limit is to the amount of stuff they worked with their hands. But farming was the principal one that they were good at in that. And raising a lot of children, apparently. So you see, it's 12 kids, 13 kids, 14. Oh, Heather, I'm wondering, this Heather Ott from Canada, I'm wondering why they would not have just stayed in Holland if they were supportive of them. There is a story there. The Dutch certainly wanted to help the Anabaptists, the Mennonites, you know, with the persecution that was going on in Europe and that. But they have their own problems over there too. They, you know, here are all these immigrants, if you want to call them immigrants, coming into Holland, emigrants coming out of Switzerland, are taking up space, taking up resources, you know, and that. Again, Justin, you have anything you want to add to that?
I think that hits on it. We found we're still finding documents from around that time period where there's a lot of correspondence between the Dutch Mennonites, the state authorities, people in Switzerland, all sorts of people. On the one hand, like you said, Stephen, they wanted to help their brethren as best they could. On the other hand, they really could only absorb so many into their society, and so some did stay and integrated there. Some went on to North America, and there was a plan for some to go east toward Prussian lands, although that didn't materialize with our ancestors, although I think in later generations, some of the Dutch Mennonites did do that. but it involved a lot of socioeconomic questions. And I think it's something that our family association is only in the past few years really exploring that part of our family history. So I think we'll probably have some exciting discoveries and understandings to share in the near future on some of that.
Thank you, Justin. John Schurch wanted to know about how come we seem to have 4 codes that we talk about the most, and that the code C, code E, code H, code N, and we have from A all the way down to Y. And that, well, as we find information, we beef up these codes, but we're not getting information. For example, code A, very limited information about the descendants from that branch of the tree, the same as the others. So they would, as we find connections and they expand, well, then we will expand those codes. But principally, when we talk about the Ulrich line and the Casper line and the Joseph line and that, a lot of information has flowed in from family that have been connecting and providing information through the research questions they've been sending us. And when they send us their family tree, we connect it up as much as we can, as fast as we can. And that's how these different larger branches have grown. Again, Justin, I don't know whether you can add to that. If we don't receive the information, we can't expand on the codes.
That's right. Some of the people who show up on those immigrant lists, we just haven't found any further trace of those people. We don't know if they even had children or what became of them. Although recently, I think we've been able to make some really good connections on J, L, M, and certainly V with Alan. So I think you'll be seeing some of that information filtering in through the newsletter and other places as well.
As one last comment, because we are coming up to the hour here, I'd like to thank Janice. She says here, I know Joseph Schurch at Dune, Ontario, kept the downstairs door unlocked so that the Indigenous people could easily come inside and warm up by the fire. And I suspect that's happened a lot. The Anabaptists were very friendly to other nationalities, people, especially the Aboriginal people. So there's probably a lot more stories out there. And like I say, Carrie Adams, our editor, would love to get articles to put into the newsletter. So if you have stories about a relative ancestor, by all means, send it to us, and we'll do our best to get that in there. And certainly any births or deaths or sports people out there, yeah, we'll take them all. We love that kind of stuff. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the time allotted for today's symposium. If you have submitted a question that we haven't been able to get to this evening or have others, please feel free to email us at schurchsymposium@gmail.com, and we will respond as best we are able to in a timely manner. We do want to thank everyone who attended today's event, as well as our producers today. Ray Schurch and his wife Joan Schurch did an excellent job of making sure that this all come together. And Kerry Schurch in Hollywood, California, with all his skills with meshing in the videos and the slides and pictures and putting up with my dialogue. He did a fantastic job as well. And Doug Schurch, of course, is leading the committee as our chairperson for the symposium. So thanks again for Doug. And Justin, thank you again for what you've done for us. The Schurch 102 has been—
Thank you, Stephen.
The Schurch 102 symposium has been scheduled for Saturday, February 26th in 2022, and we'll be opening the registration for that event shortly after this symposium. But mark it on your calendar, please. And if you have an idea for a symposium, our committee can help you script it and produce that event. Ideas can be sent to the committee at the schurchsymposium@gmail.com. So that's it, folks. Thank you and family. Thanks for coming. And thank you again for joining us. Happy holidays.